If we lined up all the trucks that exported Polish apples abroad, we would create a lane of trucks stretching from the Baltic Sea all the way to the Tatra Mountains, which is more than 600 kilometers. That is how many vehicles were transporting Polish apples for export. The apple is a pillar of Polish agriculture and a very important export product. Poland is the largest producer of apples in Europe and the fourth producer in the world. On average, we harvest about 4 million tons of apples every year. This also demonstrates the scale and potential of Polish growers. Every third apple in the European Union's fruit basket comes from our country, from Poland. This scale translates into real trade. Every year we sell abroad about 800,000 tons of fresh apples. Importantly, we are growing not only in quantity, but also in value. The value of Polish fresh apple exports is high, which already gives us 7th place worldwide in terms of export value. This is a clear signal that Polish apples are increasingly appreciated and considered more valuable by consumers. The strength of Polish orchard farming comes from both places and people. When it comes to orchards, we have about 80,000 fruit farms, which gives us great strength, especially because the cultivated area is very large. About 150,000 hectares of orchard land. Thanks to this, we can offer our consumers truly fantastic apples that are available all year round. Because we have the knowledge, the skills, and the best land to produce apples that are tasty, fresh, and of consistent quality, available to consumers throughout the entire year. The heart of Polish orchard farming beats in Mazovia, from the Warka and Grójec basin. The Grójec land comes almost 50% of apple production in Poland. In other words, every second apple in Poland originates from the Grójec region. And this is not without reason. It is precisely in the Grójec area that we have the Grójec apple, which has received the European Union's Protected Geographical Indication certificate. This points to the quality and reputation of Polish orchard farming and of Polish apples. Orchard farming has changed a lot over time. If we go to an orchard today, we see neatly aligned rows of trees planted as if with a ruler, pruned with a ruler. In practically every orchard, we now have hail protection, frost protection, irrigation systems, and of course beehives. The orchard of the past and the orchard of today are very different from each other.
The flowering period usually lasts about 1 week to a maximum of 2 weeks. Everything depends on the temperature and the weather conditions during that time. As you can clearly see, this is the most beautiful moment both for apple growers and for tourists who visit us in large numbers at this time. However, it is also perhaps the most intensive period of work in the orchards, because during this time, apple trees are most vulnerable to various diseases. In spring, late frosts are very common in this region, and we have to counteract them in different ways. Here we have frost protection in the form of overhead sprinkling. When the frost appears, we turn on the water, and as the water changes its state of matter, it releases a great amount of heat, allowing us to protect the buds, which at this stage are the most vulnerable to spring frost. A temperature below 0 degrees Celsius can permanently damage them, leading either to quantitative losses or to qualitative ones. Poland also has a unique climate, where before harvests there are cold nights. These cold nights help apples to develop better coloration, and thanks to this, they also gain better flavor qualities. That is why in this geographical latitude, we produce fruit that is especially tasty.
Także tutaj w tej szerokości geograficznej smaczne owoce produkujemy.
Poland produces so many apples that we have to export them, and we must adapt to what consumers abroad prefer. Polish apples are exported to almost every corner of the world. Since we lost the Russian market in 2014, we have put a lot of work into restructuring our industry, including the restructuring of apple varieties, in order to adapt to the requirements of other markets. Thanks to this, today the variety Gala is dominant. It is number one in Polish orchards. Long ago, the leading variety was Ida Red, because the Russian market liked it very much. Today, however, as most consumers around the world prefer Gala, it has become the leading variety in Poland. Apple production technology has changed dramatically. The way orchards looked in the past and the way they look now is very different. Some visitors who come to our orchards are surprised to see how they look today. As you can see behind me, these are orchards cultivated in rows, with very small crown thickness, which allows sunlight to reach every apple and make them better colored. In addition, in such orchards as here, we use hail protection nets. The climate has also changed. In the past, we did not experience so many extreme weather events. Now, almost every year, we are struck by hailstorms, so we must secure our orchards with protective nets.
Polish apples are the best apples in the world. Let us remember that Grójec apples are Polish apples that have received the Protected Geographical Indication Certificate. And this is a very important matter for us as people who cultivate these apples, but I believe also for Polish people in general. In Poland, we have two such apples with Protected Geographical Indication status, the Grójec apple and the Łącko apple. However, when it comes to Grójec apples, we can say that we are in the largest orchard of Europe. In our association, at the very beginning of its activity, in its best period, there were more than 500 orchardists associated with it. I think this is an enormous number, and it shows how many people in our region are engaged in orchard farming. Of course, the taste of our apples is influenced by the place where they are grown, namely here in Grójec County and in the neighboring municipalities. In this geographical area, we have the best soils, pozol soils, which make the apple trees grow very well. We also have a microclimate with cold nights and very warm days in the pre-harvest period, with an amplitude reaching even 20 degrees. This gives the apples an incredible color, the blush that is much stronger than in apples of the same variety grown anywhere else in Poland. What else? These soils and this microclimate give us higher acidity, which makes the taste of the apple more interesting. Why is it more interesting? The apple is not more sour, absolutely not. This acidity brings out the flavor of the apple, its sweetness, a perfect balance. It also gives our apples an intense fragrance. Our apples simply smell beautiful. I do not know of any country in the world where there are no Polish apples, or at least no products made from Polish apples. The image of the orchard itself has changed a great deal, and not only that, the technologies for storing apples have also developed. Here in the Grójec region, the first apple storage facility was built by Jan Cieślak. In the year 1915, he would go to the market in Warsaw with apples and sell them. He realized that the fruit was available for too short a time, even though it brought good earnings, because at that time the apple was a luxury product that cost quite a lot. Wanting to extend the availability of apples on the market and have the raw material for longer sales, he built the first storage house, creating proper conditions for the apples to be stored and available for a longer time. Over the years, we have perfected the methods and ways of storing apples so that today apples are available 12 months a year. We must understand one thing. An apple can be prevented from breathing. It can be put, in a sense, into hibernation. We place it in a room with very little oxygen so that it does not oxidize. We maintain the right temperature and humidity. And in such conditions, it can be stored for as long as 12 months without any loss of appearance, flavor, or aroma. That is a very long time in which we are able to store apples without using any chemicals. It is simply our knowledge of how to treat and preserve the apple. We simply do not allow it to breathe. We put it into a state of hibernation.
In fruit sorting plants, we have very advanced machines that make it possible to sort fruit, dividing them according to color, mass, and size. Even their internal quality is examined non-invasively, which allows us to deliver apples to the consumer in the highest quality. The internal state of the fruit is assessed without cutting it open. Sometimes, when looking at all of this, it feels almost like space technology. We are now in an apple sorting facility. This process begins with the delivery of goods from shareholders or external contractors. Everything is labeled, processed on an industrial scale, and weighed before delivery. Each batch is tagged with an individual label assigned to each shareholder. Then it passes into the storage zone. The goods for sorting are delivered in pallet boxes, each weighing about 300 kilograms. The fruit enters the production line, where it is unloaded with a water system. Then it is passed through a device that scans for color, mass, and damage, so the fruit goes through a preliminary sorting, spread into channels, and packed again into 300-kilogram crates. After that, the apples are either manually or automatically processed and packed into cartons. In the storing chambers, apples are kept in pallet boxes stacked up to 12 or 14 meters high. These are large chambers with their own controlled atmosphere, each operated separately and remotely adjustable. This is a modern, state-of-the-art facility. The apple variety market is changing. One could say it's evolving. Once we had popular varieties such as Malinówka or Kosztela, but unfortunately, those varieties have faded into history. Some of our older consumers remember them fondly, but they have been replaced by modern varieties. Today, I think the #1 variety on the market is Gala. But there's also Prince, Golden Delicious, Red Delicious, the entire group of Jonah Gold 2-color apples, Champion, and Ligol, a Polish variety bred in Poland, are all popular. So everyone can find something for themselves, from completely red apples through 2-colored to entirely green ones. Right now, we're in the central part of an orchard, where new apple tree varieties are being bred. Here, in this plot, we are already evaluating new clones that come after the seedling selection stage, and we assess their suitability on various types of rootstocks. We are creating new varieties, and in addition, I personally deal with breeding new vegetative rootstocks for apple trees. We also test new genotypes here. From the moment a breeding program begins until a new variety is achieved, about 20 years pass. This is the time in which we select parent forms, cross them with each other, harvest seeds, produce seedlings, and then evaluate those seedlings. Clones are tested, as you can see here, in variety, comparison, and implementation trials. In the final stage, they are submitted for official registration trials. After verification of our results, the varieties are entered into the National Register of Varieties and the Book of Exclusive Breeding Rights. That is when the 20-year breeding cycle ends, and after this period, commercialization takes place. The varieties enter production orchards, and their fruit goes to the consumer's table. On the table here, we have varieties that have been registered in the past 30 years in our institute. Our breeding is based on crossbreeding, meaning that we cross two predetermined varieties, a mother and a father, and obtain offspring. The best known result in the European Union and worldwide is the Ligol variety. In the case of Ligol, every year Polish orchards produce from 7 to 9% of the entire national apple output. I would like to draw attention to a new direction of breeding that we began in the year 2009, the breeding of red-fleshed apple varieties. Here, I can show two genotypes, which are still at the clone stage, but already have satisfactory processing value and are also tasty. These varieties contain a very high amount of antioxidants, which provide health benefits for humans. Eating even half of such a red-fleshed apple a day enriches the diet with these pro-health components. These are the apples of the future. In most breeding centers around the world, work on red-fleshed apple varieties began about 1.5 decades ago. We have also taken up this challenge. If you look more closely at such an apple, you will notice that its flesh never browns. If we slice such a fruit and dry it, we obtain apple chips that can be eaten instead of chips made from potato. It has been 5 months since that most beautiful time we had in April and May, the flowering season, when all of these orchards behind me were covered with beautiful white blossoms. Until now, the moment all orchardists wait for, the harvest. As you can see, the apples are almost ready to be picked. The color is right, but we are still waiting a little for the right size. And these fruits will need to be here for another 3 to 4 weeks on the trees in order to reach their full flavor maturity. Because fruit is not only about appearance, it's also about taste. What I can proudly say about this orchard is that autonomous driving systems are used here, mounted on regular tractors that were previously operated by drivers, or by me. After adding these systems, the tractors were transformed into autonomous vehicles. And thanks to them, many tasks in these orchards are performed automatically. The tractors drive by themselves, without an operator in the cabin. The operator is now the orchard owner, who, using a mobile phone or a computer application, can monitor the current state of the tractors and see how many % of their tasks have already been completed. In this orchard, for example, we use autonomous tractors for mowing the grass, a process that must be carried out several or even a dozen times a year. The driving speed is about 6 to 8 kilometers per hour, so you can imagine how many hours would normally be spent sitting on the tractor seat. The GeoTrack autonomous driving systems are a completely Polish product, developed by orchardists. We have reached such a level of development in our company that we now deliver these systems not only to fruit producers in Poland, but also successfully sell them abroad.
Systemy za granicą.
W tradycyjny sposób, żeby wydłużyć termin przydatności
Traditionally,
jabłek,
in order to extend the shelf life of apples, we make preserves in jars.
No, ale można też wykorzystać inne
However,
technologie,
other
żeby
technologies can also be used to prolong durability.
termin przydatności,
For
na
example,
przykład je
freeze drying.
Dzięki niej właśnie pozbawiamy takie jabłko.
Thanks to this method, we completely remove water from the apple. In the process, the apples are first frozen, then, under vacuum, the ice evaporates. Sealed hermetically in barrier packaging, such apples can be stored for many years. And when the package is opened, the apples are still crunchy, still have their wonderful aroma, and can be eaten as a healthy snack.
Dzięki technologii liofilizacji utrwalamy.
Thanks to freeze drying, we preserve apples while maintaining their full nutritional values.
Parametrów wartości odżywczych są one
They remain
całkowicie,
completely natural,
zachowują
with the
te
same properties and vitamins as fresh apples.
wartości, witaminy. Jabłka w naszej produkcji
In our production, we use them in several ways.
Właśnie w formie takiej przekąski.
As a healthy snack to crunch on, as an ingredient in oatmeal, or in desserts.
Dodajemy je do owsianek, do deserów.
One of our best sellers is apple crumble.
Bestsellerem. Kruszonka z jabłkiem, czyli
Apple crumble, which we call apple pie without the dough, is made from apples stewed with cinnamon and sugar, then freeze-dried together with crumble topping that we also dry.
Zapakowana w paczkę, później wystarczy
Packed into a pouch, it only requires a small amount of water to restore the crumble's crispness, while the apples delicately rehydrate, giving the taste of freshly made homemade stewed apples. Let us remember to eat apples with the skin, because it is right under the skin that the greatest treasures of our apples are hidden. This is where the active substances are found that help us look beautiful, feel good, and stay healthy. The apple is truly a superfruit, a very valuable product in our diet, and we should not forget about it. Eating just one apple a day gives us a great deal of health benefits. It not only supports our intestines in the proper way, but also improves the appearance of our skin, our overall well-being, and even the way we breathe, meaning our lungs. Eating apples actually helps us breathe better, which at first seemed completely abstract to me. But there are scientific studies proving that recovery after, for example, coronavirus infection is easier if we eat apples. So the apple is a fruit that truly helps us maintain our health. The apple is, in fact, a natural ambassador of Poland. We are fantastic at what we do when it comes to apple production. It is not just a fruit. It is the history of regions, the history of people and families who stand behind these apples, behind these orchards. We are increasingly confident in saying that the apple is our ambassador. It is the fruit we can be proud of, the fruit of our work, and the fruit we can share with anyone who wants to taste the most delicious fruit in the world, the apple.